Spish Cakes, EB, and JP. But join us right now to talk a little Commanders. He covers them for ESPN.com. Joining us on the BetQL guest hotline is our pal John Keim. Hey, John.
What up, guys?
So, John, you were like a lot of the head coaches in the NFL. You said, I don't need to go to the combine, right?
yeah. For ESPN, we have a lot of people that they send, and so I'm going to the owners' meetings. But there's it's a major TV thing for us. So
why does it feel like? Why does it feel like though that it's taking a beating this year? Like. You know what I mean? There's like more guys skipping it and less.
Because there's a couple things like with the quarterbacks. I mean, the top quarterbacks haven't worked out in a while. You know, like they're not always throwing there. They can throw at their pro days. I also think sometimes you look at it, and there's some guys who are they going to stand to benefit from it? Like, is Marvin Harrison? How is he going to benefit from working out there?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think
sure.
there's some guys are exercising more power. And, you know, I wonder with some of that too, and this is maybe, I don't know if this is a little bit of a stretch, but you got guys coming in there with more NIL money. And so they don't have to, you know, again, how's Marvin Harrison going to benefit from working out there? You've got this money here already. You know, you're going to be the top 5 pick. Are you going to improve your standing? And I don't know how much money plays into that with what they've already made. Maybe it doesn't. But, you know, I don't know.
Hey, John, I listened to your pod, a couple of them over the weekend, and you touched on the whole deal that we all touched on Friday about the news that Harris was sitting in on the meetings.
Right.
And you were told from your people that it was strictly, you can explain it to the guys, but it was strictly informational. He's not in there. He's going to have zero impact on who they pick. He just wants to know how the process works.
Yes. I mean, there's a couple things. First of all, he is a former college athlete, so he does know competitors. You know what I mean? Like, he's worked in that private equity world where it's like it's full of competitors, right? You know, hungry competitors. So you put that in there, like he knows what you want to see in a guy who's a competitor. So that's one thing. But the biggest factor to me, and what I was explained to me by multiple people, and also just researching a lot and talking to a lot of people about him over the last 8 to 10 months, especially, and his management style. It's like, get as much information as you can. And I think part of it too is, you know, he's new to the NFL, wants to kind of learn the process and go through it. And then you're adding on top of that, it's a quarterback. And this is going to be the face of a franchise. You're the owner. You can at least sit in on there and have, you know, just observe and learn about this particular guy, because this might be the guy that's leading your franchise. So I think it's all of that, but he wasn't sitting there grilling guys. You know, I would say, you know, he's a football, you know, he knows enough about football. I mean, he's followed it. Again, he's an athlete. I think there are probably things that he has that he likes in a player or that he'd like in a player, but he defers to his people. And the other thing too, that people need a couple things with him too. He wants everybody always tells me he wants as much information as possible. So let's say he sits in on these meetings and he thinks like, oh, I really like quarterback X. And they come to him and say, you know, yes, but, you know, this guy is blah, blah, blah. This guy's this. Then he's going to take all that and you process it, but he's not going to just push you to a certain player, let's say, that maybe that has happened here in the past. That's not his style. And I think he also is a guy that strips emotion from the decision-making process. And so I think that's where, so he's not going to sit in there, fall in love with the guy and say, we've got to get this guy. That's not his style. So I think it's just information and learning.
I know we're almost 2 months out at this point from the actual draft in Detroit, which I believe starts on April 25th. But are you starting to hear the buzz and feel like momentum is building for Drake May to be the pick over Jaden Daniels at number 2?
Just like how the momentum was for Ben Johnson as the head coach.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say,
who knows?
I think it's exactly. I think these guys are pretty close. and you hear things throughout about, well, so-and-so likes this guy, so-and-so might like this guy would be a good fit in here. This is a pretty tight-lipped group. And so I would be surprised if at what's today, March 4th, that they have like, oh, this is the guy.
Right.
It's not how, it's really not how they've operated. And again, I go back to even the GM search. Adam Peters was the guy they wanted. They pounced on him. But as someone else explained to me, they knew they were going to hire a GM. They did a lot of work before the end of the season. So while it looked like a fast decision, the work had been put in for a couple months beforehand. And with the coaching process, there's always one that they would describe as they wanted to be very open-minded, not just, fall in love with the guy after an interview and just say, oh, this is the guy. And the next guy, oh, maybe this is the guy. I think it's, take the information process and go. So I would be surprised right now if I think, again, you hear some people would say like, oh, well, Drake May really fits what they might want. And then you hear on your show, Jaden Daniels, game changer.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you process all of that? But I also know when a guy like Dan Quinn says that, I mean, they know what they're saying. And I think they have a pretty, so I don't think they're going to, but I don't think they're going to tip their hand with any of this.
It would seem silly if they did.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they're very close. They're very close. These guys are very close.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to go back. It's going to feel like it's going to go back and forth. And it probably depends on who you ask in the organization too.
Yeah, I bet. So one thing I heard Hoffman say on your pod was that, and this scared me, just this idea. He said Jaden is more of a one-read guy. That scares me. I don't know if that's fact. That was Hoffman. Someone told him that, or that's his perception from what he's seen. And maybe it shouldn't scare me, but that scares me. That just I get RG3 chill bumps when I think about that.
I will say this: when you have two NFL receivers, probably both going in the first round,
and they're wide open,
it's probably easy to be a one-read guy.
And when you're as fast as he is, so you don't see the first guy, and then you just take off and you run for 13 yards.
I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying I heard that, and that scared me. That idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thing with Jaden too, that the kid is ultra talented,
right?
But there are some things that when you watch him a lot of times, and I was watching him again yesterday, where like this is a really clean pocket, and you're making these throws to ultra talented receivers. You know what I mean? Like because what I like to watch is like what's an NFL pocket look like? It doesn't looks
like a mess
all the time.
Here,
exactly,
especially in DC.
So that. Right, and in most places it's going to be somewhat messy because that's just how it is. And if the first read wasn't there, you want to see what's the progression where like the ball for him, most of the throws are going to be to the outside down the field, not a lot of tight window middle of the field throws. So how do you process that? Is that something he wasn't asked to do? Or is it something they don't feel? So there's a lot. To me, there's always a lot to learn when you look at that. But I saw some of that as well. I don't know that it's that he. I think some of it could just be, like what you said. You got these talented guys. You're waiting for them, and if you're going to wait because you think they're going to win, and then if they're not, then what are you doing? So, but he wasn't always like. I also don't think that he was just a. First read's not there. Oh, I better run. Like Heath Schuler back in the day, for people who remember him, that's how he was.
Right.
This is not how Jaden Daniels is. But the thing, like when he was under duress, I didn't see a lot of like, I saw running and getting downfield, sometimes putting the head down, and when you start to go, but I think there's things that I'd want to know more. Just like with Drake May, to me, he's very inconsistent. And with Jaden Daniels, I'd want to know more. Like I'd want to see more about the pocket stuff. Just not can he throw from the pocket, but when it's a messy pocket, how does it look? Because he had a pretty good one the games that I saw. But then again, like you see him in some of those games, like you play a certain coverage, he's going to torch you with his legs. And it just forces you to play different coverages. So, like Dan Quinn said, he can be a game changer. But there are things that you have to wonder about, and that's part of what it is exactly what Craig said. Is it that? And then, so I think there's questions about each of these guys.
John, so there were, I don't know, four players released over the weekend. Leno and Logan and Gates. Just looking at the offensive line in general, we'll get back to the quarterback here, but just looking at the offensive line in general, all right, so if you include the unrestricted free agents with the guys they already released, there's pretty much no offensive lineman right now on the roster besides a couple of the backups from last year. I mean, this is a unit that needs to be addressed big time. So a lot of money to spend in free agency. Obviously, you got the draft, but Commanders fans are probably looking at this offensive line going, oh, my gosh, and we're going to draft a quarterback at 2? They've got to do something in free agency starting in 11 days, I would think.
Yes, and because I know a lot of people will be like, well, trade back and get more picks and do this and that before you get the quarterback. You can do both. You can get the quarterback, but anybody who says that is absolutely right. Like, they have to fix that group, and you can do it some through free agency. I think tackle will be the interesting one because you still have Andrew Wiley there. And if you wanted to, and I don't know that they're thinking about this or not, but his best spot is guard. His best spot in Kansas City was guard. And, so you have a need at left guard, but that would leave you with needing 2 tackles.
Right.
And and the draft is good, has really good tackle depth. So you can get a guy you could trade back into the first round if you want, or you can get a guy early in the second. So there's one option there, but you're going to need to sign somebody in free agency that can start for you. And I think the other part is center. You're going to have to find a center. And because that's like Ricky Stromberg, they drafted him last year, but there's no evidence that we don't know if he can be a starting center in the NFL, and neither do they. And so I think you're going to need that spot as well. So you're looking at, at least, 3/5 of that line being different. And you have some, can Chris Paul elevate to a starting left guard? I don't, if you're a new group, are you going to rely on that? I don't think so. So there's going to be some changes there. And yes, my concern too with the center, like I would want a veteran center, because if you're going to have a rookie quarterback, I'm going to want a guy who can help you with the protections and et cetera. So there's a lot that they have to fix there.
We knew there was going to be a lot of turnover. Of those 3, Gates, Leno, and Logan Thomas, which one, if any, surprised you the most?
None.
Not
one. Because I knew with Leno's was getting older, coming off the hip injury, made more, and then Logan, just age, injuries, going to be 30, he's 33, going to be 34, something like that. So that did, and Nick Gates did not play well.
Right.
So, and they saved money on each of them. I mean, they didn't have to create more cap space, but they did. So that's to me a benefit, because they had enough already, but they created more, but none of those surprised me.
So I saw a rumor over the weekend from, one of these Twitter accounts, NFL Twitter accounts that puts out rumors. And it said that keep an eye on the Commanders and Tyron Smith, the stud tackle from the Cowboys. Now, he's had a lot of injuries. Does that one make sense to you, or?
It's going to be a high price tag, though, too.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. As somebody from Dallas pointed out to me yesterday, like, if this guy's going to go somewhere, like, you're going to want to go somewhere where he can compete for a Super Bowl. I mean, so that's not here. So unless there's no other options, and if Washington, here's my problem. There's there's that. So, like, would he even want to come here? It's the same thing like I hear with Bobby Wagner, who's your free agent. Oh, just go sign him. Well, he wants to stay on the West Coast, and he wants to play with a contender, neither one of which this team filled. So, I think guys like that, you're up there, you want to play for a Super Bowl. And then if you're Washington, you look at it like he hasn't played 16 games or a full season since like 2015. Missed a lot of games in recent years. It's not a great investment. The guy can still play. And Dallas limited his practice time last year, and that helped him get to 13 games. And again, he's still really good. I think he was second team All-Pro. So he's still really good. So if you sign him to a 1-year deal, okay. But anything beyond that, to me, would be a tough investment. But again, if it's a one-year deal for Tyron Smith, why would he come here when you can look at it like, I think they have a lot of good things going for them, but if you're looking at it as a one-year deal that you want to get to the Super Bowl, well, I think there may be other options for you. And if there's not, then that's fine because he can still play. But again, anything more than a one-year investment would be tough for somebody in his situation.
JK, getting back to the quarterback thing, if you had to put money on it, would you say, all right, they're definitely like 100% drafting a quarterback at 2, or do you think it's a possibility, and it could be a small chance, but they could either move back or, maybe a Kirk Cousins is a possibility? I don't think that they would go that way, but do you think it's pretty much 100% chance they're drafting one of those guys at 2?
I think 100% chance. I don't know that I would ever say that,
right,
but that is the number one option. That's the number one.
Sure.
That's tops on the list,
sure,
and probably by a decent amount for a couple of reasons. One, and Cousins. Like I knew when they talked to Minnesota about him a couple of years ago before they went the Wentz deal, and of course he wasn't available, but they at least inquired because you weren't sure at that time. There was a contract situation or whatever, and at that time I remember people told me like, yes, he would be open to returning here, and it's something I heard earlier, like last month or so, right? So, that there would be, because he liked playing here, and the people he didn't like are all gone.
Yeah.
So there would be but he'd be very expensive, and it would take, the way they've done their contracts, it's guaranteed money, and it's a couple of years, and so you're going to eat up maybe half your cap space just with him. That and I don't think they had any discussions with his reps at the combine. Not that that's the only tell, but usually you'd hear something, right? But so and I don't know how much he's coming off an injury, and so it'd just be tough. That's why I say staying at 2 and drafting one of those guys. It's your chance to get your guy, inexpensive deal, allows you to build through the draft, which you want to do, and I think trading back certainly would be something to consider. I think that would be, to me, the second option on that list, because you get more capital and you can push some of that draft capital into future years, which I think is always valuable. But, what's the gap? How do you see the gap between May and Daniels and then J.J. McCarthy in that group? Because you're still going to want to get a quarterback in that scenario. And the other thing that you have to look at with that one is now you have, you're going to add more draft picks. They already have a lot of draft picks in the top 100.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're adding a couple more. That's a lot of guys to pay in a few years at one time.
Right,
so
right.
You want to kind of spread out that roster building aspect. And, so that's why I say I think that'd be 2. And trading up for number 1 would be, far lower on the list.
Yeah.
I just don't, it'd be hard to see that. But so I think staying at 2 and taking 1, I would say
that's
if I had to put a percentage, I'd say
95%. Yeah.
It's pretty high. It's pretty high. Yeah.
All right, John. Good stuff. As John Keim covers the Commanders for ESPN.com. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Coming up at 7:45, we'll get into the Capitals, who won a big one on Friday, but then lost a tough one yesterday. Tarek El-Bashir covers